Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on cyber career opportunities in the COVID era. Now, 2020 has been tough for all of us. I mean, who could have imagined that all school children will now be sitting glued to their laptops and parents will actually motivate them stay on their laptop? Or the fact that work from home has become so common that even commercial rentals have begun to fall because most companies are allowing their employees to completely work from home. Almost everybody today uses video conferencing, social media, and most interesting, cryptocurrencies have really grown tremendously over the last few months. Now, let's try to understand how this changes things for us. Every industry is going digital, right from agriculture, education, entertainment, banking, financial services, everyone's going digital, which naturally means that there is going to be a massive increase in demand for people building websites, apps, taking businesses online, going digital. Now, this also creates a lot of opportunities in the field of cyber law. Let's try to understand one by one how. So overall, I would say there are 5 major opportunities that arise. The first is crypto law consulting. Now, when I use the word crypto, I am not only talking about Bitcoin. That's one part of it. So I'm going to go a little deeper into what that means. But that's one area which emerges. Second, e-commerce law consulting. So e-commerce, as we all know, is massive and it is growing day by day. Now, India has also come up with a specific law under the Consumer Protection Act to tackle this. So that's another area we are going to discuss. Thirdly, cybercrime prosecution and defense. Now, since everything is moving online, naturally, there will be more and more crimes that happen in a digital world. So prosecuting and defending those also emerges as an opportunity. Fourthly, presenting digital evidence in court. Now, today, in almost every case, there is some element of digital evidence, whether it's a digital photograph, something from social media, or even Bitcoin transactions. All of these need to be presented in court. That presents the fourth opportunity. And finally, as more and more digital assets are created, registering them under the relevant intellectual property laws globally also becomes a massive area. Now, let me start. First of all, let's talk about crypto law consulting. Now, you all must have heard about Bitcoin. We keep hearing the prices of Bitcoin, but let's try to put it in perspective. Did you know that Bitcoin is now the 7th largest currency in the world? Now, let me explain what that means. When we look at currencies around the world, the biggest is the US dollar in terms of the amount of US dollars that are there in the world. It's about 4.9 trillion. Next, the euro. Then we come to the the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc, the Indian rupee, and then very closely behind is Bitcoin. So where the Indian rupee has a capitalization of 0.6 trillion, Bitcoin's already crossed 0.4 trillion. Put that in perspective. The currency of the entire country of India is not that much more in size than Bitcoin, which is one cryptocurrency run by so many people in the world, we don't even know who runs it anymore. Now, because of this massive rise in Bitcoin, a lot of other altcoins or alternative coins have come in. There are more than 4,000 publicly traded cryptocurrencies. And it's not just about crypto anymore. Governments around the world, their central banks, are also experimenting with what we call as central bank digital currencies. So, in fact, the Chinese central bank here has taken the lead. They've already launched their central bank digital currency, and billions of yuan in transactions have already happened on it. Now, one by one, every country is going to go into that direction because it is still money being issued by the government, by the central bank. But when it is issued directly in digital form, you can actually bypass the entire banking system when it comes to payments. But that is going to change our world tremendously. So that's the first. Second, of course, the various cryptocurrencies. And now the big boys are entering the party. So it's not just about the hoodies, those hacker kind of people or the geeks who would deal in crypto now. Now you have the suits coming in. You have the top bankers, the top billionaires. All of them have begun to invest their money into cryptocurrencies. Then we have a very interesting concept called DeFi, which is called decentralized finance. Now, what does that mean? Today, finance is quite centralized. So it revolves around banks and financial institutions. But now imagine a world when finance moves on to the blockchain And it's no longer centralized. You don't need to be a bank. You don't need to even have a bank account to do this. So this creates its own legal challenges also. And as more and more DeFi use cases start to go live, this presents a massive opportunity for us. Then we have a concept called decentralized exchanges. So whereas for stock markets, for example, in India, you have the BSE and the NSE, in the crypto world, you have hundreds of exchanges. And it's not like they don't want to get regulated. It's just very difficult for them because they're operating on a global level. So simply getting registered as an exchange in one country is not enough for them. So they need to start registering in multiple countries, or at least begin to start complying with local laws. Another massive opportunity for cyberlaw. Then we have a concept called flash loans. Now, when you think about a loan, what do you think is the minimum duration that people take loans for? So you will say, okay, maybe a few weeks or a few months. But do you know you can actually today take loans for a few seconds? Now you'll wonder, why would I want to take a loan for 10 or 20 seconds? Well, that's the beauty of flash loans. You know, where people find an arbitrage opportunity or a difference in pricing between, let's say, Bitcoin on one exchange and Bitcoin on another, or Ether on one exchange, Ether on another. You could actually take a loan, and during the period of a blockchain transaction block being made, which could be even a few seconds, you could buy on one exchange, sell on the other, square off your deal, and make a profit in seconds. That creates its own need for a lot of legal documentation. We also have a lot of lending platforms which are emerging in a decentralized format. All of them need to comply with local laws. We have prediction markets. Now, many of you may say prediction markets are gambling and they are illegal. Well, that's not the case. It depends. So that is where these prediction markets, for each and every use case that they are working on, they would need local lawyers to consult on whether this would come under gambling or it would be considered a game of skill, where you're allowed to do this and it's not even considered gambling. You also have stable coins. Now, one of the classic examples of this would be Facebook. So I think in 2019, they announced that they're going to come out with the Facebook Libra, which would be a cryptocurrency run by one of the world's largest companies. Now, naturally, there was a lot of hue and cry, a lot of opposition from the regulators, from the banks. So Facebook went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we are no longer going to be a cryptocurrency. We are now going to be a stable coin. What does that mean? One-to-one backed by fiat currency. So they're going to come out with 4 initially, backed by the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the Singapore dollar. So like this, they are going to, and the euro. So like this, they're going to have multiple stable coins. But what does that mean for us? Today, when you transfer money around the world, you usually use something called as SWIFT and the banking system. It costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time. It could even take a week or more sometimes. Now imagine you have an app like WhatsApp in your phone, and you could transfer money in multiple currencies around the world in seconds at virtually zero fees. You realize how that is going to hit the banking world? And stable coins are now set to create a massive amount of market valuation, which would even cross cryptocurrencies. And because these are backed by what we call as actual money or real money, all banks are going to start issuing them. So that creates another huge legal opportunity. Did you also know that you can buy equity shares on the blockchain? Now you'll wonder, how is that possible? I mean, a company like Alibaba or a company like Facebook, Google, Amazon, now when their shares hit the market, they're traded on regulated stock exchanges. But people came out with this interesting idea where you wrap an equity share and put it on a blockchain. So for example, you could have a large custodian, a very reputed financial institution. They've set up a custody unit. They take control, or they hold equity shares. Against that, they issue contracts, or smart contracts on the blockchain, which means anyone in the world could go online and buy shares of virtually any top company in the world without too much botheration about which country you're in, what KYC you need to follow, whether you need to pay in foreign exchange. You don't need to bother. You don't even need to get a broker for yourself. Download a peer-to-peer app, buy equity shares of any company in the world, and make money. So this again creates a massive opportunity for us because this needs to be regulated. And when I talk about crypto law, there's a huge number of them. If you look at it just from the Indian perspective, it is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. It is also the Information Technology Act. We have taxation laws, and then a whole bunch of fintech laws that come in. So in conclusion, this is the first massive area which is emerging for cyber lawyers, which is crypto law consulting. The next we have is e-commerce law consulting. Now, I don't need to prove to you how big e-commerce is. Especially during the lockdown, almost everything that we bought was bought online. So we understand why e-commerce companies are growing at this massive level. Now here the government of India has come out with the Consumer Protection E-commerce Rules 2020. Now these are going to affect not just the Indian e-commerce companies, but even foreign players catering to the Indian market. Now where are the career opportunities for you? First is complying with these rules. Now they lay down the duties of e-commerce entities, the liabilities of marketplace e-commerce entities, duties of sellers on these marketplaces, and duties and liabilities of inventory e-commerce activities. Now, all of them need to comply with a lot of legislation on a regular basis. It's not a one-time thing. You have to constantly comply. That creates massive opportunity, number one, in e-commerce law. Secondly, they need to comply with the data privacy laws and other regulations of the Information Technology Act. Yes, India is working on a separate data privacy law. It's been quite a few years in the making and it has not yet been passed. Till that new law comes in, all data privacy issues are being covered by the Information Technology Act, and there are quite a lot of provisions in that. Then, all these sites need a lot of policies drafted. The cookie policy, almost every site you visit gives you a pop-up about cookies. Now, this started because the European Union came out with a law on this, that everybody catering to the EU market has to disclose the cookies that they use in greater detail. And because most companies deal with a global audience, everybody needs to have cookie policies. Then, as an e-commerce company, you would have a safe and secure shipping statement, terms of use, refund policy, e-waste recycling policy, acceptable use policy, disclaimers, refund policies, grievance redressal mechanisms. Everybody needs it. Now, some people think, why can't we just go to the Amazon or Flipkart site, copy all their policies and start using it? Well, you can use those policies as a base. But for almost every e-commerce company, you are going to have to do some element of customization. And this is not something that anyone can do on their own. So it's not like any entrepreneur could just pick up the Amazon policy, make changes and say, okay, I'm compliant. No, they would need somebody who's competent in e-commerce law to actually do this for them. Another very important drafting policy which comes in is privacy policies. Because again, it's not just as per the laws of one country. Almost every e-commerce company has a global audience. So you need to comply with the California Online Privacy Protection Act, the EU General Data Protection Regulation, which we also call as the GDPR, the California Consumer Protection Act, the Information Technology Act of India and all its allied rules. And these don't just apply to e-commerce companies. They also apply to websites, blogs, mobile apps, Facebook apps, desktop apps, digital products, digital services. Almost every digital product has to comply with a whole bunch of these legislations. So that's e-commerce law consulting opportunities. Then we have cybercrime prosecution and defense. The numbers are mind-boggling. 80% of Indian internet users have been hit by a cybercrime at least once. The global average is 56%. In India, it's 80%. That's the massive level of cybercrimes hitting our country. Did you know that in 2019, India reported more than 45,000 cases? That's almost 63% more than the previous year. Now, this creates a huge opportunity for lawyers specializing in cybercrime prosecution and defense. Because for every cybercrime case, there is going to be somebody who's accused who needs to be defended and somebody who's prosecuting. Creates opportunities on both ends. Now, there are a lot of laws that come in when we talk about cybercrime prosecution and defense. Of course, we have the Banker's Book Evidence Act. We have the Code of Criminal Procedure, the Evidence Act. We have the Extradition Act, the Indian Penal Code, the Payment and Settlement Systems Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, Telegraph Act, and of course, Information Technology Act, and all its allied rules and regulations. So this creates massive opportunity. Number 3, cybercrime prosecution and defense. Then, once you have so many of these cases, most of those cases are going to involve digital evidence. How do you present that in court? In a lot of international cases today, we see Fitbits, Health apps, all of them are being used as evidence. Amazon Echo, that's being used in evidence in a murder trial. Somebody's pacemaker, a device put in the heart, that was used to prove that this person had actually set fire to his own house. And that was used in an arson case. So everywhere that we look, there are digital devices. You must have heard of the concept of IoT devices, Internet of Things. Almost everywhere you see IoT devices. You see so many crypto transactions, Bitcoin transactions taking place. What about the criminal who uses Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency? That Bitcoin wallet or crypto wallet needs to be presented in a court of law. In fact, according to the European Union, almost 85% of criminal cases involve some amount of digital evidence. So now the question arises, how do you present this in court? This is not simple at all. Try presenting a Bitcoin in court and you will realize how complicated things get. Because, surprisingly, what most people don't know, there is nothing called like a Bitcoin which you actually hold. It's not like rupees and dollars that you're holding. Surprisingly, there is no Bitcoin. It's actually just a ledger with a series of transactions. I don't know if you've seen the first Matrix movie, in which there's this mind-blowing dialogue which goes, there is no spoon. Someone is bending a spoon with their mind. And somebody asks, how are you able to do this? How are you able to bend a spoon with your mind? And the person says, there is no spoon. Now just imagine when I tell you, there is no Bitcoin. It's actually a global ledger. Transactions are happening. And we presume that, okay, you know what? These represent something called Bitcoin. I know it's a little crazy to understand, but now try presenting this in court. And that's when you realize how complicated cryptocurrencies actually are. Presenting emails in court is not too easy either. How about evidence from IoT devices, laptops, mobile phones, networks in companies, servers, websites? All this evidence needs to be presented in court, needs to be presented under the Indian Evidence Act and other laws. That creates massive opportunity number 4. And finally, we have IP registration and license drafting. Now just look around you. Almost every business that you see is going to have mostly an app. If not their own, they're going to be part of a third-party app, business processes. Then what about computer source code and object code? Every software company, no matter how small, is constantly generating source code, which is very important intellectual property for them. Databases, documentation, derivative computer programs. What about digital content? We talk a lot about influencers. What are influencers creating? Intellectual property. Every video, ebook, post, which you make on social media, presentation, articles, photos, all this, infographics, mind maps, these are all digital content which can be protected under the intellectual property laws. Software, video games, that creates an opportunity for cyber law consultants to actually get this registration done, and sometimes in multiple countries. And it's not that easy to do. There's also a huge opportunity in drafting software licenses and confidentiality agreements. Here again, you can't just go online and copy paste someone else's license and put it on your product, not at all. Because almost every software product has certain changes, certain nuances, certain things which are unique to it. We need to be very careful in how we are going to protect them. And that's what creates massive opportunity number 5, IP registration and license drafting services. Now, I hope you've sort of understood the massive opportunity that's around you. It requires you to obviously learn a lot of this stuff. It also requires you to constantly stay updated with it. So what I've just said, I'm also going to put it down by way of a small document and social media post that you can read up on. I'm going to put this video also online. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. So keep posting us your questions. I'll be back again to answer them. Thank you so much.